Good evening. This hearing of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. Today is, I should have looked that up first. October 29th, Friday, thank you. The time is 6:13 p.m. Oh, it's the 28th. Oh, I was just crossing 8. You guys, I'm not being staffed very well. Sorry, I'm kidding. Today is Friday, October 28th, and the time is 6:13 p.m. If you would all please rise, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it's great to see all of you tonight on a Friday evening in Nogales. Thank you for coming tonight and participating in the process. We very much appreciate you being here. I'll go ahead and introduce the people around the table. I'm Chairman Mathis, and tonight we have Commissioners McNulty and Sturts. We also have legal counsel. Oh, and I should say, first of all, we have two other commissioners, Vice Chair Freeman and Vice Chair Herrera, who are not here tonight, but they'll be able to watch a recording of this meeting tonight. It's all being recorded for viewing later, as anyone can download from our website. And we're all taking turns going across the state to about 26 or 7 different locales. And so not all the commissioners go to all of the hearings, so, but we can all watch them later online. Other folks at the table are legal counsel Mary O'Grady, our mapping consultant, Willie Desmond. We have a court reporter tonight, Ken, who's here to take an accurate transcript of tonight's proceedings. And we have staff in the room. We have Deputy Executive Director Christina Gomez and Public Outreach Coordinators Lisa Schmeling and Christy Olson. And I think that, oh, and we have Buck Forrest hiding there behind the hand went up. He's the Chief Technology Officer recording all of this so that it goes up on the internet at a later time. So with that, we also have a translator. Federal law requires us to translate all of our hearings, and tonight we have Elsa Gutierrez, who will be, if Ms. Gutierrez would come up to the microphone, and if you could give some words of welcome in both English and then in Spanish, that would be great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elsa Gutierrez. I am the English-Spanish interpreter translator. Buenas tardes. Yo soy la intérprete de inglés y español. Intérprete y traductora de inglés y español. Chair Mathis, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, in accordance with the Voting Rights Act, a translator-interpreter will be available at all the public hearings in order to provide interpreting services that might be needed for those citizens that need translating or interpreting services. Please contact the translator present at this meeting so that she may assist you. Presidenta Mathis, comisionados, damas y caballeros, de acuerdo con la ley de los derechos electorales, un traductor e intérprete estará disponible en todas las reuniones de audiencia pública a fin de proporcionar la traducción o interpretación que puedan ser necesarias para los ciudadanos que necesiten servicios de traducción o interpretación. Por favor, contacte a la traductora e intérprete presente en esta audiencia para que ella le pueda ayudar. Thank you.
Thank you. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to hear from you, and there will be an opportunity for public comment in just a little while. But if you'd like to address us tonight, please be sure to fill out a yellow request to speak form. I have a few up here, and I'll be calling these names later, and you'll come up to the microphone and give us your input on the draft congressional and draft legislative maps that have been posted and approved by the commission. And that's why we're out talking to everybody across the state to hear what they like and they don't like about these maps. And it's an important part of the process, and we're here to listen to you. So we are glad that you're here to talk to us tonight. If you don't want to address us at the microphone tonight, if you don't want to speak tonight, there are certainly many other ways to provide input, and Willie Desmond will be going over some of that in his presentation, but just to alert you now to your packets that you should have received on the way in, the last page has a blue form in it, and you can provide written comments to the commission using that form by filling it out tonight if you want and handing it to one of our staff, or filling it out later and mailing it to us. So there are multiple ways to provide input, and we hope you will. So with that, I think I've covered all the housekeeping items for tonight, and we can go ahead and get started with the overview of the process with Mr. Desmond.
All right, thank you. My name is Willie Desmond. I work with Strategic Telemetry. We're the firm hired to provide technical assistance to the commission for the mapping process. I'm doing a short presentation today about the draft maps and the process that has happened to get to this point. The goal of these hearings, though, first of all, is to hear your comments about the draft maps. So thank you very much for taking the time to be here tonight, and we're very much so looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I guess before getting to the draft map, so I do want to give a brief background on the commission and the process that's been taken. So, Arizona's redistricting process is governed by the state constitution as amended by the voters in 2000 with the passage of Proposition 106. It stipulates that Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission redraw Arizona's congressional and legislative districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. That most recent census was 2010, and following that, Arizona gained a ninth and additional congressional district. Proposition 106 outlines 6 criteria that must be met during the redistricting process. The first one is that it must comply with the U.S. Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. The second one is that equal population must be ensured, down to a one-person deviation in the congressional maps, and also equal population in the legislative maps, although there isn't quite so much of a burden to get to a one-person deviation. These first 2 criteria are federally mandated and universal in all the states. The next 4 are specific to the Arizona Constitution. They are, to the extent practicable, the districts must be compact and contiguous. They must respect communities of interest. They must use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tracts when possible. And they must favor competitive districts where there is no significant detriment to the other goals. Specifically on the Voting Rights Act, Arizona's congressional and legislative districts must receive pre-clearance or approval from the Department of Justice or a federal court under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act before they can take effect. To get pre-clearance, Arizona must demonstrate that the new districts do not discriminate against minority voters in purpose or effect, which means there can be no intentional or accidental discrimination. Under Section 5, Arizona's redistricting plans cannot be retrogressive. Plans cannot weaken or reduce minority voters' rights. Finally, the presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. At this time, I am going to interrupt the PowerPoint for a minute to show a brief video by Bruce Adelson. He works with Federal Compliance Consulting. He's an attorney, and he's been advising the Commission on the Voting Rights Act and the pre-clearance process. So if you bear with me for 1 second.
Hello, my name is Bruce Adelson. I wanted to spend a few moments with you to talk a little bit about redistricting. I was a senior attorney for the United States Department of Justice in 2002 when the department and my team objected to or blocked your legislative redistricting plan. It's very important to understand that under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which is a federal law, Arizona must obtain approval or pre-clearance from the Department of Justice or from a federal court in Washington, D.C. for your redistricting plan to go into effect. Under Section 5, under federal law, your redistricting plan cannot discriminate against the rights of minority voters. It cannot retrogress their opportunity to elect whom they want. This is a federal requirement. The federal requirement supersedes and takes precedence over all state requirements, whether they're competitiveness, compactness, contiguity, or keeping communities of interest together. Those are all very important, but if they conflict with the Voting Rights Act, and conflict with the one person, one vote requirement of the U.S. Constitution, then they must be revised. The requirements of the Voting Rights Act and one person, one vote are paramount. There cannot be any retrogression or discrimination against the rights of minority voters. If there is, the Department of Justice will not approve the redistricting plan. That's what we said when we wrote our letter in May 2002, and we objected to what the Redistricting Commission 9 years ago had done. We found that the redistricting plan, the legislative plan, had discriminated against the rights of minority voters. And under federal law, that plan could not go into effect. So that as you contemplate redistricting and look at the various maps that have been provided by the Commission, it's very important to understand that the federal requirements under our system of law and government take priority. Those requirements cannot be minimized and must be complied with for your redistricting plan to go into effect next year to enable you to have your legislative and congressional elections. I hope that my perspective as being a former federal law enforcement officer has been helpful, and I wish you continued success with your redistricting process. Thank you. Hello, my name is Bruce Abelson. I wanted to spend a few
Once is
moments
probably
with you
enough.
to talk a little bit about redistricting.
Okay, so next I'm going to just talk about the steps involved in the redistricting process. The first of these steps was the establishment of the commission. Earlier this year, the commission was established. The commissioners were appointed through a thorough screening process and serve in a voluntary role for the state of Arizona. The 5 commissioners are Vice Chairman Scott Freeman, Vice Chairman Jose Herrera, and then Chairwoman Colleen Mathis, Commissioners Linda McNulty and Richard Sturtz, who are all here with us tonight. Once the commission has been established, the next real important step is the first round of public hearings. Before the commission drew a single line, they held 23 public meetings all around the state in July and August to get input from the public about issues relevant to the redistricting process, such as communities of interest, minority voting rights, and competitiveness. Following that, the third step was the actual mapping. Per Proposition 106, we must start with a clean slate. We cannot look at old districts, we cannot pay attention to incumbents, any of those things. So we start with a clean slate. Then we must create a grid map. This is a map that is kind of as it sounds, just a district that's a plan that has districts in a grid-like pattern to as much extent as possible. This grid map we'll talk about further, but really only meets 2 of the criteria, which is compact and contiguous districts and equal population. The grid maps were approved on August 18th. Since adopting the grid maps, the commission has met 25 times to work on adjustments to those grid maps. They considered all types of adjustments to meet the various constitutional criteria. They received a lot of public input during that time, and they also received other draft maps from other individuals and groups. The draft maps were then approved. On October 3rd, the commission approved a draft congressional map that incorporated the changes based on all of the constitutional criteria. It approved a draft legislative map on October 10th. The fourth step is the second round of public hearings, which you're at tonight. It says we're currently visiting 25 towns and cities. I believe that's up to 26 right now. To share the draft maps, explain a little bit about them, and then hear the public's input on what they think of the draft maps. This is going on throughout October and the beginning part of November. Once this public comment period is over in the second round, we will adopt final maps. Upon completion of this comment period, these maps will then go to pre-clearance, sent to the Department of Justice. And because Arizona is subject to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the district maps must be approved by the Federal Department of Justice or the federal court in Washington, D.C. before they can be used in Arizona elections. So now that we've kind of understand the process a little bit, I'm going to show you how the commission came to these draft maps. As you can see up on the screen, this is the current congressional district map, last used in 2010. It'll be retired after that election, and there will be the new maps used in 2012. Following this, per Proposition 106, we had to start with a blank slate. We then did the grid maps I touched on earlier. You can see they only take into account equal population and compactness. They were adopted in August, as I mentioned. There was two options for both the legislative and congressional, and option 2 of each was adopted. Following that, the grid map was then adjusted to meet the other constitutional criteria. After more than 25 meetings, the Commission voted to adopt this congressional draft map that you see here. In addition to taking into consideration the 6 constitutional criteria, the Commission also listened to public comment via the public meetings, the round 1 of public hearings, comments mailed, emailed, hand-delivered, faxed, and telephoned in. In total, over 5,000 public comments were submitted and used to develop this draft map. As you see, there are some highlights of the map here. There's 2 predominantly rural districts, one on the east and one on the west. There are 3 border districts. There are 3 districts in the greater Tucson region. There are 5 districts that are entirely within Maricopa County. It avoids splitting Arizona's Indian reservations. And there are 2 districts where minority voters have the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. All right, now going on to the legislative map again. This is the current legislative map that was last used in 2010. Again, we had to start with a blank slate and then go to a grid map that only met the equal population and compact and contiguous requirements. Again, over those 25 meetings, the map was adjusted to come with the legislative draft map you see here. Some highlights of this map are that the old district lines, because of population growth and shrinkage in different parts of Arizona, had districts that ranged in size from about 155,000 all the way up to 378,000. The new district has a range of only 207,000 to 215,000, so the districts are much more equal in population. To comply with the Voting Rights Act, this draft plan includes 10 districts in which minority voters have an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Also, it includes 3 districts wholly within Pima County and 3 additional southern Arizona districts. Also, there are 17 districts primarily within Maricopa County and 9 districts that are primarily rural. All right, the Commission really wants to hear your input. That's the purpose of these meetings. And there are many ways to make sure your voice is heard. By attending the meeting today, you have the opportunity to speak and get your comments on the record. You can also fill out a blue form and turn that in. You can speak about anything that you care to. You can talk about the constitutional criteria, one or the maps or the other, anything you think is important. You can also submit your input to the IRC website or call us at 602-542-5221 or toll free at 855-733-7478. We do want you to stay connected with the Commission. Right here is a screenshot of the Commission's website. The red arrows point to a couple key areas that might be helpful to you. If you look at the meetings tab, you can find out information about upcoming meetings, the locations and times. You can also go back and watch the video and the transcripts of any of the past meetings. So you can see the process. If you're curious about how these maps were developed, you can rewatch the meetings and see how the commissioners crafted them. There's also the public input form where you can submit your input about the forms. And lastly, and probably most importantly, are the different links to the maps. If you click on the Maps tab, you'll see a page that looks a lot like this. It's been changed just a little bit. The maps are available in lots of different formats. They're up there as PDFs, as JPEGs. One thing I do want to highlight is they also are available as Google Maps or KMZ files. If you click on that tab, it'll take you to a page that looks a lot like this, where you can look at the maps and zoom in to your particular area. You can look at just your house. You can see the borders of the districts. You can see the streets and the blocks that comprise them. By clicking on the areas on the left, you're able to turn on and off various districts and really kind of drill down and see how these maps are comprised. Just to wrap this up, I'm sorry, also, just so you zoom in, you can see greater detail. You can zoom in a lot closer than this. Just to wrap this up, I do want to highlight the Commission's website again, www.azredistricting.org. Again, on the website, you can not only look at the maps, you can also draw your own maps. You can watch the current and past meetings, and you can get updates on future meetings. If you're into social media, you can follow us on Twitter at #AIRC, or you can friend us on Facebook. I think that pretty much wraps it up. Again, thank you very much for coming tonight. We're very much so looking forward to hearing your comments, and we will be working with those moving forward to make some tweaks to these maps in order to try to make what's best for the state. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Desmond. So that takes us to the next part of our hearing, which is the public comment. And so just some reminders, if you haven't done this before, please come up to the microphone and say your name, and please spell your last name, and that way we'll get an accurate transcription. Also, if you could say where you live, just a city, town, or county suffices. You don't need to give us an address, and we'd prefer actually that you don't. And then go ahead and provide us with your input. And on your input, to the extent you can be specific with us, please do so. Please tell us exactly areas that you've looked at that you feel are, if there are certain lines that need to be adjusted in a certain way that you think need to happen, please tell us what those are. And if you've thought about the ripple effects even that would result from any movement, because as everyone knows, once you move any little line, it affects the whole map. Please tell us how we can mitigate some of those ripple effects. We'd appreciate that. So with that, I've got about eight request to speak forms right now. If people could limit their comments to 4 minutes each, we won't pull you off, but just try to be mindful of what everyone, so that we have, well, now we have 9, so that everyone gets an opportunity to speak, and we'll try to keep it at 4 minutes each. With that, our first speaker is Maddie Erkin, representing SELF from Sahuarita.
Chairman Mathis and commissioners, thank you for being here and agreeing to listen to us. My name is Maddie Erkin, M-A-D-D-Y-U-R-K-E-N. I do live in Sahuarita, and I was going to discuss my community of interest, the I-19 Santa Cruz Valley area, which clearly includes Nogales, I'm here, and as well as parts of Tucson, and some of you may recognize my face because I was there too. However, because the very legitimacy of the commission is being challenged at the highest state governmental levels, I will simply say that even though the maps presented today are not nearly competitive enough, especially the LD map, and my community of interest is in danger of being split, I value the work of the commission. The commission has been operating under threats of one sort or another while carrying out work as defined by our state constitution as amended by a vote of Arizona citizens. The commission was even created following that constitution. Talk of impeachment is simply out of order. Your work should be respected and valued by our elected officials and not defamed. Although you and I may disagree in fact or in principle, I support and am grateful for your work, and I wish that you felt that support and gratefulness from top to bottom. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is William Mackey, representing SELF from Green Valley.
Madam Chair and members of the Commission, my name is William Mackey, last name spelled M-A-K-I. I am representing myself. I live in the Green Valley neighborhood, and I was originally planning to be at your meeting in Green Valley. I'll be out of town, so I come here to Nogales to talk about Green Valley. But let me digress for a moment. Once again, I want to thank you for your work on this commission. In particular, I appreciate your congressional district draft map with its 3 competitive districts. I hope that you can find a way to increase the competitiveness of the legislative district map as well. If left as it is, I fear that Arizona is destined for another decade of one-party rule, and that would be a terrible blow, in my estimation, for democratic processes in our state. As an example, witness the governor's interference in your work. She does this not for legal or moral grounds, but just simply because she can, because of one-party rule. Now, competitiveness aside, I am here this evening to make a plea for maintaining the integrity of the community of interest that I will refer to as the Santa Cruz River Valley or the I-19 corridor. Let me start by using myself as an example. Probably a bad idea, but my postal address is Green Valley. My physical residence is within the town limits of Sahuarita. I pay taxes in the Continental School District. I frequently shop in Tubac, Green Valley, Sahuarita, and Tucson. My athletic pursuits range from hiking in Madera Canyon near Green Valley to attending U of A basketball games. I subscribe to the Tucson Symphony and I attend performances of theaters in Tucson. Although retired, I hold an adjunct professorship at the university where I attend research talks most Friday. Now, note carefully, in what I just described, there is not one mention of communities to the east. The principal axis of the Santa Cruz River Valley is north-south along the I-19 corridor. Commerce, recreation, and education all flow north-south and not east-west for a good geological reason, the Santa Rita mountain range. There is no easy and short route across those mountains. They represent a natural eastern boundary for the Santa Cruz Valley. Thus, the interests of those of us in the Santa Cruz Valley do not match all that well with those of the more rural communities to the east. Placing Green Valley in LD1 of the draft map fractures a naturally defined community of interest. As a practical matter, that also runs afoul of compactness and contiguity. East-west transportation is not direct, so Green Valley is functionally disconnected from, say, Sierra Vista. Instead of an unnatural placement in LD1, I urge the Commission to keep Green Valley together with its neighbors in LD2 and thus respect the Santa Cruz River Valley as our community of interest. Thanks for your attention, and again, I wish you have my best wishes going forward with this process.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eduardo Delcy, I think is the last name. Representing Self from Santa Cruz County.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Eduardo Delcy. It's D as in David, E-L-C-I. I am currently the chair of the Santa Cruz County Democratic Party, but I'm only speaking on my behalf in this presentation. I've had 3 other opportunities to address the Commission before, and I welcome this opportunity, and thank you very much for coming to Santa Cruz County to listen to our input. Most importantly, my concern, I'm very pleased with the Congressional District 3 that has been proposed. My concern is with Legislative District 2. And my biggest concern in that is that I've argued consistently that Santa Cruz County should remain as a single political entity and not be divided. And reading Dr. Mackey's comments about preserving the values of the Santa Cruz River Basin is critical to all of Santa Cruz County. I see that in Legislative District 2, and it may be because of the unfortunate past history of the state of Arizona, that it has to go before the Department of Justice in order to clear whatever findings the Commission comes up with, that placing the borderland region of Cochise County, which is predominantly Hispanic, and placing that particular vote within Santa Cruz County, I think is a disservice to that particular community because it weakens their political vote within Cochise County. Cochise County, to me, should be an entity tying in with Graham and Green Lake County because of their makeup. They're rural, they're border county. It's a border county, Cochise County is. It's an agricultural base, both in cattle and in farming. It has small businesses, small towns, and I think that is very critical. I don't know the exact figures to be able to determine what that population base is, but because of the geographic division that the Huachuca Mountains made or developed between Santa Cruz and Cochise counties, it's more natural to have that borderland region that is right now delineated for Cochise County should stay within Cochise County and not gerrymandered with Santa Cruz County. If in fact we're looking for a population base that would respect the minority community vote, then looking west into the Tohono O'odham Nation for the Native American vote and the Hispanic vote that is registered in Santa Cruz County and the Santa Cruz River corridor basin is more consistent with a legitimate competitive district that would respect the minority community vote, much more so than trying to place the lower end of Cochise County in with Santa Cruz County in order to rationalize that minority vote. I think it weakens the position of the minority vote in Cochise County, and we want to reinforce the minority vote throughout the state. I don't have a full understanding of how legislative or congressional District 1 is delineated. It puzzles me that if I'm reading the map wrong, I beg your pardon, but if I read it correctly, it extends Coconino County all the way to Greenlee and Grant County and down into Cochise County, reaching all the way to a little corner of the state. I don't know if that was intentional to create a third congressional district along the borderland region, which is being proposed by that particular delineation. And I don't think that that's a good definition for you to be looking at. Thank you very much. And I also would like to reinforce, condemn personally the governor's action against the commission and the previous action by the Attorney General. Unfortunately, the courts found that you are working independently and you're doing a tremendous service for the state of Arizona, which as a fourth generation Arizona, I appreciate your effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Mendoza, representing SELF from Nogales.
Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing. I can tell you from personal experience, having sat in a similar status that you have, that when you're being attacked by your adversaries, it's because you're doing your job. Don't be afraid. Go forward in doing the same effort that you have put forth so far. The job you're doing is commendable, and I really greatly appreciate the work you're doing. I want to thank the Commission for listening to the people on the issues. I've come before you. This is the third time now. I appreciate the fact that you listened to the Hispanic Coalition's interest and that you responded appropriately. Nogales is a community of interest with South and West Pima County. We are culturally, economically, and physically bound. The Santa Cruz River and I-19 physically bond Nogales and Santa Cruz County with Pima County and Tucson. Nogales and Santa Cruz County have been very happy with our congressional district as we're currently served, and we're happy that that's hopefully going to stay that way. When it comes to the legislative maps, I do have some concern. Again, I thank you for preserving the historical and cultural ties that have existed in our state for many, many years. However, I do have concern over what needs to be done as far as civic participation in elections, and you're guaranteeing that there is competition and that it is given a little stronger support. I'm hoping that our legislative map includes more of the I-19 corridor and the community of interest that we have there, and I don't quite understand the eastern part of the legislative district for down here. But I am hoping that that community of interest in the I-19 corridor continues. And I thank you again for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rich Bowman from Tubac.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Rich Bowman, B-O-H-M-A-N, and I do live in Tubac. I'm currently serving as the president of the Santa Cruz Valley Citizens Council, but I'm here tonight just speaking on my own behalf. The first comment I want to make is it's unfortunate that I believe both meetings in the Nogales area have occurred at 6 p.m. on a Friday evening. And I was unable to make the first one because of a prior commitment. And looking here at the room, we've got a few people, but certainly not as many as I thought. And I don't know who's responsible for setting up the meeting time, but it's unfortunate we didn't have a time of Monday through Thursday night versus a Friday. So just a comment. I've looked at the maps. I can't even appreciate all the work that you must have trying to get down to the number 1 and equalizing all the areas. I mean, I'm not even sure how you do that. You've got to have a map that's so big to get all the various households in. It's incredible. So that in itself is a chore that seems to be very daunting, and it looks like you've met that. I am concerned, and some other people that spoke tonight voiced the same concern I have. And with me, it's both within the congressional as well as the legislative districts. Santa Cruz Valley, which basically runs from Nogales up through Tucson, but from the perspective of keeping in mind the population constraints, I'm going to use the area south as the Nogales border up to maybe where the South Tucson city limits start. I would like to see the entire Santa Cruz Valley, both sides of the I-19, communities of interest, be in the same congressional and legislative districts. Looking at the congressional district, I don't think our area here has a whole lot in common other than that we live in Arizona and like each other with Yuma. They're an agricultural area. I think they should be maybe part of the area that's including La Paz County, which I believe is not very populous, and move that boundary line further to the east. And then I look at the congressional, I'm getting a little different perspective, but if I were a candidate and looking at the geographical areas that some of these candidates have to oversee, I mean, there's some very big disparities in what their knowledge and interests have to be of those districts or those areas that they have to cover. But to get back to my real concern, I would like to see the map change slightly to include all of the Santa Cruz River Valley, and I think one gentleman outlined the mountains to the east, and keep the I-19 corridor and the communities of Nogales, Rio Rico, Tumacacri, Tubac, Sahuarita, Green Valley in the same congressional and legislative districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Doug Holler, representing Self from Nogales.
My name is Doug Holler, H-O-L-L-E-R, and I'm here representing myself. I'm a 4th generation Nogales resident, and I believe we're up to 6 for sure. And I'm here representing myself. I say that again because I am the treasurer for the Santa Cruz County Democratic Central Committee. I'm a precinct committee man for Precinct 19 here in Santa Cruz County. I'd like to start with saying in regards to the Congressional District 3 that I'm happy with the current proposal as it stands. And in regards to Legislative District 2, I have mixed feelings because I think it's great for a Democrat from Santa Cruz County, which is here, but I think it's a could be tad unfair for a Democrat from Cochise County to have that division there. And I asked the commission to maybe have another look at that, and I trust that the commission will do a fair and good job with it. Which leads me to, I want to thank all the commission. I know you're doing volunteer work, and it's hard work, and I think you've done a very good job. And I know the governor and others have been critical in interfering, but from my past experience, that just tells me that you're doing a good job. So, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cesar Parada from the City Council in Nogales. Sorry. I probably didn't say your name very well, so it was probably hard to hear, or recognize, I should say.
Hi, my name is Cesar, C-E-S-A-R. Last name is Parada, P-A-R-A-D-A. I'm presently City Councilman for the City of Nogales, first of all. Thank you for coming to our safety city in the state, to Nogales in Santa Cruz County. And I'd like to really congratulate your staff and your volunteers, workers, for bringing this program to Nogales so we could have a good input into the legislators, redistricting and congressional. I think that Nogales and Pima County, we have sort of a great bond together with those cities. Most of our people go for medical. Most of our kids go for education. So, and I believe that I'm very confident, and I really think that you guys made a big job. It takes a lot of time. I know it, not only a lot, but a lot of effort and a lot of input that you were getting. But I really feel confident on what you have done on both legislative and the congressional. And the good thing about it, it's still open. The doors are still open for improvement. So that gives everybody a chance to put their inputs. I would like to thank you for being here in Nogales.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rudy Molera, Santa Cruz County Supervisor, District 2.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commission. I too want to thank you for coming down to our community, Nogales, and especially on a Friday. Actually, I have my own personal criticism for coming down on a Friday, Game 7.
All right.
We're missing the World Series. But all kidding aside, we really, really appreciate getting back to my name is Rudy Molera, M-O-L-E-R-A. And I too want to thank you, because obviously you have a major challenge. You have had a lot of criticism and a tough job, and I too support your efforts. I believe you guys have done a real good job. Santa Cruz County, first of all, the Congressional District 3, I personally live in that district, and it didn't change. I agree with some of the, I want to echo some of the thoughts that were expressed earlier. Santa Cruz River Valley is critical culturally, physical, and economical. We have a bond with Tucson and the whole River Valley, and I believe it's good that it's kept together. The legislative, I am going to also critique a little bit, and I do agree with the earlier comments where the people in Cochise, Douglas, need to stay in Cochise, and we need to maintain our district with our own in Santa Cruz, and hopefully the commission can listen to these minor critiques that we've made today. I do understand that you guys have a very challenging job, like I mentioned earlier, and we do thank you for coming down here, and we thank you for your efforts. It's a tough job, and keep working hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marshall Magruder, representing self from Tubac.
Good evening, Chairman. My name is Marshall Magruder, M-A-G-R-U-D-E-R. I live in Tubac in Santa Cruz County. And I'm looking at your congressional district, and I know you've worked hard. This is not easy to play games with these numbers and try to come up with something that makes everything balanced. But looking at your grid map for the congressional districts, I actually like it better than your actual congressional draft map. And whatever you did in your 26 meetings, you sure gerrymandered a lot in the meantime. But looking at the one that you're working from now, I'm a very strong believer that the I-19 corridor is I-19, us in the Santa Cruz Valley. So as you know, history for Santa Cruz County broke away from Pima County. They're our mother county. So if there's any place that we're closest to, county-wise, it's Pima County. In fact, we're a fairly small county, as I think you know, only 47,000 people. Lots of time our county will hire Pima County people to be our coroner and various jobs that we just can't support a full-time staff position. So our county does work very closely with Pima. We also work very closely with Green Valley and Sarita. And sort of the border, the San Javier Reservation border, below that is all the same community, all the same community. And to make this happen, looking at your map, what I would sort of suggest is to take the eastern boundary of Santa Cruz County and extend it north to I-10. And then put all that into our county, into this same legislative district. But to compensate for that, I would then combine Yuma into one district and take La Paz and above La Paz as far as you needed to go to the west and make that all into Congressional District 3 on the map. Now, I really think we worked hard to draw those little things around Naco and some of those other places down to the south in Cochise County. That county should be the same. That county is the same. It's like Santa Cruz County working with Pima County. And it works very closely with Greenlee and Graham County. And those three would be a nice grouping together because they're very rural. Because this big, one gigantic rural district you have is absolutely impossible for some one congressperson to represent. It would be, that person, think of their mileage. Think of to make a talk to any of your constituents. I'm not running in that district or anything, but that's a terrible place to represent. And to make it a little bit smaller, what I would do is take District 4, which is the green district, and move it over to the boundary of the Navajo Nation, which cuts up through Yavapai County into Coconino County. But so you keep the Navajo, the Hopi nations together, but the other Indian organizations on the Colorado River would stay in the 4 and not in the world's largest congressional district, which is probably what that would be. And I really think it's just size-wise is absolutely impossible. I do think keeping the Southern Arizona voting population have some representation with 3 people in Tucson is very important because we sort of are a minority group compared to the rest of the state. Looking at the legislative district, I think keeping them, I also like the grid map better than the gerrymandered one at the bottom. And when you look at Santa Cruz County and Cochise County, I would get all that pink stuff out of District 2 and put it into District 1 with Cochise County and combine it with Greenlee and Graham County again. And again, take the eastern boundary of Santa Cruz County, extend it up to I-10 and cut across, because those people in Whetstone and Vail and those communities are actually closer to us than they are to Cochise County. And if we need some more people because we're going to lose a couple, I don't mind the Tohoto O'odham Nation joining in with our county, because we're good friends with those people too. So those are just some comments. Keep I-19 as one community, and make all of Cochise County one border county. Santa Cruz County, maybe including the Tohoto O'odham Nation, as a second border county. And Yuma, again, you might want to combine it with La Paz. Those are my comments. I don't have the numbers. I know you guys get a chance to play games with moving the numbers around. But I think keeping the communities together and acting as a community is what we're all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was my last, no, I have one more. This is Pat Fleming, representing Self from Cochise.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and staff people. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Pat Fleming, F-L-E-M-I-N-G. I live in Sierra Vista, well, just south of Sierra Vista in Cochise County, and I'm here this evening as an advocate for good government, true legislative representation, and my communities that I claim here on the southeastern border. I'm grateful for the opportunity to express my support for the process that's been presented at the beginning of the meeting, where you were showing the public who might not know all of the details of what happened in November 2000, when the people of Arizona voted by way of Proposition 106 to create the commission that you're sitting on. It seems to me like many people don't understand or just don't recognize that you all were appointed by the legislative leadership. That is, 2 of you from the majority party and 2 of you from the minority party. You all set a great example by electing an independent chairwoman. I think many of us here in Arizona can take that as evidence of a democratic process that many of us really need to be reminded of and maybe put better into practice. Your bipartisanship efforts really have set a great example for the rest of us, and I appreciate that very much. The process, beginning with a clean outline of Arizona, has made a lot of progress from them. Hearing people talk about the grid maps, I think maybe I need to go back and look at those grid maps again myself. But the lines are drawn without the consideration of sitting incumbent legislators, and I think that's very, very important. Each of you have been under constant attack, apparently, and I personally find that appalling, when you should be commended for your efforts as citizen volunteers who are assuming a huge task. And I'm very pleased to hear the support that's come from the people of this community. Please know that for those who are attacking you with disrespect or disrespecting the will of the voters, but there are as many of those who do appreciate what you're doing and respect the commission and the work and your efforts. Now, this is not to say that I agree with all of the distribution of the legislative district lines you've already created in this approved map. There are way too few competitive districts in the entire current map. For example, my concerns are about legislative district 2, here where you're sitting now, created as a minority-majority district. Now, that has a lot of merit itself, except that the district has apparently been packed to create that supermajority, giving a 26-point advantage for the Democrats. I ask that you make some minor changes that would not change the Democratic-leaning district by moving the Democratic-leaning precincts of Bisbee, Naco, Douglas, portions of Hereford and Palominas that are sitting in Cochise County, and move those back into LD1. It certainly wouldn't make LD1 much more competitive, but I believe you could pick up some of the numbers for population along the I-19 corridor. I believe too that doing such, bringing, as you've already heard, bringing those smaller areas back into the folds of Cochise County in itself is truly being respectful of the communities of interest we have there, and certainly the Cochise County residents, as many as you heard the other night. But thank you for being citizen volunteers, thank you for your attention, and thank you for considering all the comments that have been made to you this evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission, or anybody I missed? Okay, well, and I'll let my fellow commissioners speak too, but thank you very much for being here tonight on a Friday evening, and I apologize that the scheduling worked out the way it did. I didn't realize that we had a Friday evening last time too, but it's impressive that all of you came out and joined us and took time out of your lives to do this, so thank you. And I also appreciate your comments. We heard them all, and I also appreciate your professionalism in delivering them. They were all very respectful, and we appreciate the support. With that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner McNulty.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on a Friday night, and thank you very much for your support. This has been a long and difficult process. It's fascinating at the same time, and it's really gratifying when fellow citizens come out and spend time and give us detailed comments, and are able, on the one hand, to say they support the process, and on the other hand, tell us very directly what they disagree with in the maps and how they would like to improve them. So I really appreciate that. I will ask Willie if he knows what the score is. Sometimes he's... Okay. Well, I can't get you an update, sorry.
Oh, Commissioner Sturts.
Madam Chair, again, thank everybody for coming out tonight. If there was a Packer game on, Willie would know the score. The I-19 corridor, the Santa Cruz corridor, is incredibly important. We understand it, we've heard that. And I wanted to give compliments to Pat Fleming, who, this is the third time this week that we've seen you. I didn't see you in person last night, but I saw your testimony online. So I wanted to say that you're putting some miles on as well, making sure that you're getting your testimony heard to the commission, as you were in Thatcher last night, and you were in Sierra Vista 2 nights before, and then tonight here in Nogales. And I like to say that we're not coming down to Nogales, that we're coming up to Nogales, as I remind all my friends in Phoenix that they're coming up to Tucson, and now we're coming up to Nogales. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. All of your comments were extremely thoughtful. They were well thought through. They were comprehensive, and they gave great testimony and great basis for us to be able to move forward and make our decisions as we contemplate the changes going forward on the maps. So thank you, and I have a great time watching the game tonight if that's what you choose to do.
And I would just note that the tour continues. Tomorrow we'll be in the city of Yuma at 1 p.m. at Yuma City Hall. So if anyone wants to make the trek to Yuma, you're welcome to join us. Or you could watch online. I hope that it will be streaming. If it's not streaming, it's because there's some technical difficulty with bandwidth. We've had that issue. But it will be recorded, and it will be uploaded if for some reason we're not streaming live. After Yuma, on Tuesday is our next meeting, November 1st, and that's at South Mountain Community College in Phoenix. So you can check our website for future meetings. We'll continue these on through November 5th. And with that, I think we will adjourn. The time is 7:11 p.m. Thank you.